Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss CBSE Class 9 Ganita Manjari Part 1 Mathematics Chapter 1 Orienting Yourself, the Use of Coordinates. We will be discussing the first portion of this chapter and the rest of the portions will be completed in the coming videos which will be available in the playlist. See, the coordinate geometry was developed by the French mathematician René Descartes in the 17th century. In this chapter, we will learn how to locate points on the Cartesian plane and understand their positions using coordinates. So, first let us talk about the two-dimensional Cartesian coordinate system. See, in Cartesian system, there are two perpendicular axes. There are two perpendicular straight lines. One is the horizontal straight line x dash. Another one is the vertical straight line y dash. And these two straight lines intersect at this particular point which is named as O. See, the point of intersection of these two straight lines, this point of intersection is called as origin. It is denoted by the letter O. And you see, this horizontal line no x dash, this horizontal line is called as x-axis of the Cartesian coordinate system, and this vertical line y dash, this vertical line is called as the y-axis. Okay, and you see this direction OX, this is the positive direction of x-axis. That is why the values are given as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, which are positive values. And this direction OY, this is a positive direction of y-axis. That is why the values here are given as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. That is positive values. And you see, when we consider this direction OX dash, this is the negative direction of the x-axis. That is why the values are given as -1, -2, -3, -4, -5 negative values. Similarly, this direction OY dash, this is the negative direction of y-axis. That is why the values are given as negative here. Okay. And you see, these two lines, that is this horizontal line and this vertical line, they are together called as coordinate axis or the axis of coordinates. Okay, this horizontal line and this vertical line. This one is the x-axis, this one is the y-axis. These two together called as coordinate axis or the axis of coordinates. Now let us see what is a quadrant. See, the x-axis and this y-axis divide this plane, that is the plane of the paper here, into 4 parts. This is the first part here. I am taking this one as the second part, and this is the third part, and this is the fourth part. And you see, these 4 parts are actually called as quadrants. That is 1/4 part of this plane, which is actually divided by these two lines, are actually called as quadrants. Okay, they are actually, see, this quadrant is named as 1, this one is named as 2, this one is named as 3, and this one is named as 4. So these are numbered in the anti-clockwise direction. I started from here, then moving like anti-clockwise. That is how they are named. So you see, this plane, that is the plane of the paper here, actually consists of two axes, x-axis and y-axis. And there are 4 quadrants. See, this x or y, this quadrant is called as first quadrant. And this quadrant, y or x dash or x dash or y, this quadrant is called as quadrant 2, second quadrant. And this one is the third quadrant and this one is the fourth quadrant. Okay, and this plane is actually known as xy plane. Okay, the plane is actually known as xy plane, or which is also called as Cartesian plane or coordinate plane. Now, let us see how to locate the coordinates of a point in a Cartesian plane. See, this xy plane is actually called as Cartesian plane. To locate a point in a Cartesian plane, its perpendicular distance from x-axis and perpendicular distance from the y-axis. Perpendicular distance from the x-axis means, you see, this distance, this line is actually making 90-degree angle here. Similarly, perpendicular distance from the y-axis, this distance is perpendicular distance from the y-axis because this actually makes 90-degree angle with the y-axis. Okay, so to locate a point in the Cartesian plane, in the xy plane, the perpendicular distance of this point from the x-axis and from the y-axis are required. These distances are actually called as coordinates. Okay, that is coordinates of the point. So, you see the distance, perpendicular distance from the y-axis measured along the x-axis. The perpendicular distance from the y-axis measured along the x-axis, that is this distance now. This is actually called as x-coordinate. X-coordinate is also called as abscissa. Okay, and the perpendicular distance from the x-axis. This is the x-axis. So, this is the perpendicular distance from the x-axis to this particular point, which is measured along the y direction. This is measured along the y-axis. This perpendicular distance is called as y-coordinate. Y-coordinate is also called as ordinate. The x-coordinate and the y-coordinate taken together are called as Cartesian coordinates or coordinates of a point. And you see, the coordinates of a point, it is represented by x comma y. Okay, here you see x comes first, that is x coordinate comes first and y coordinate comes second. And this actually forms an ordered pair. What do you mean by an ordered pair? Ordered pair is a pair of elements written in a specific order. Okay. See, an ordered pair, this x comma y represents the position of a point on the Cartesian plane. See, if I consider this particular point P in the xy plane or Cartesian plane, what is its x-coordinate? What will be its x-coordinate? X-coordinate is the perpendicular distance from the y-axis to this point, which is measured along the x direction. That is, this is the point which we are considering. To this particular point from the y-axis, this much distance is there. So, this is actually considered as the x-coordinate. So, here we have 3 now. So, its x-coordinate will be 3. 3 comma. What will be the y-coordinate of this point? That is this perpendicular distance, which is equal to 4 here. So, 3 comma 4, ordered pair 3 comma 4, that is the coordinate, x coordinate as well as the y coordinate. Or this actually represents the position of this particular point P in the Cartesian plane. Now, if you are asked to write the coordinates of this particular point, suppose I am considering a particular point P here and we want to write the coordinates of this particular point P here. How do we write the coordinates of this particular point P? We want to write its x coordinate first, then y coordinate. So, its x coordinate will be what? You see, x coordinate is 4 here, comma. What about the y coordinate? Y coordinate is this perpendicular distance, which is 2 here. So, ordered pair 4 comma 2, this actually represents the coordinate of this particular point P in this Cartesian plane. See, the coordinates uniquely determine a point in the plane. That is, if you consider the coordinate a comma b, this will not be equal to the coordinate b comma a, because both actually represents two different positions of this in this Cartesian plane. That is, for example, let us consider this a as 1 and let us consider this b as 3. Then where will be this point 1 comma 3 lies here in this plane? X coordinate is 1, y coordinate is 3. So, 1, 3. So, this is the point which is corresponding to this coordinate 1 comma 3. Now, if we consider b comma a, that is 3 comma 1. Where will be this point? 3 comma 1. So, x coordinate is 3, y coordinate is 1. So, 3, 1. this will be the point which is corresponding to this coordinate 3, 1. So you see the point which is represented by or which is given by this coordinate 1, 3, it is not the same as this particular point which is given by the coordinates 3, 1. Okay, so in general, the coordinates a, b, that will not be equal to this coordinates b, a. Okay, that is the point a, b, okay, will not be the same as the point b, a. Okay, that is in general we can say that if x is not equal to y, then the point which is represented by this coordinates x, y, that will not be the same as the point represented by the coordinates y, x. But if x equal to y, then the point represented by this coordinate x, y, that will be the same as the point represented by this coordinates y, x. Now you see, the coordinates of every point on the x-axis, whether it is the positive x-axis or negative x-axis, the coordinates of every point on the x-axis are of the form x, 0. That is, if you consider this particular point, its x value is 5. What about the y value? Its y value means perpendicular distance from the x-axis. The point itself is on the x-axis, so there is no perpendicular distance from the y-axis. So this coordinate will be 5, 0. If you consider a particular point here on the x-axis, its x value is -4. And what about the y value? It is on the x-axis now, so y value will be 0. Okay, that is, coordinates of every point on the x-axis will be of the form x, 0. That is, its y coordinate will be 0. Y coordinate or ordinate will be 0. Okay, similarly, if you consider the point on the y-axis, that is, coordinates of every point on the y-axis, that will be of the form 0, y. That is, if you consider a point on the y-axis, its x coordinate will be 0. X coordinate means abscissa. Its abscissa will be 0. That is, if you consider this particular point, see, this point actually lies on the y-axis. So its y value is actually -3, but x value will be 0. So 0, y. Sorry, not y, -3. So 0, -3. Similarly, if you consider this particular point on the y-axis, see, for this point is actually lying on the y-axis. So its x coordinate abscissa will be 0. So how do we write the coordinate of this particular point? This is on the y-axis now, so x coordinate will be 0 and y value is 2 here. So 0, 2. This actually represents this particular point. So if someone asked us to write the coordinate of this particular point, we will write it as 0, 2. Okay, and you see, this point O, this particular point of intersection of these two horizontal and vertical lines, or the point of intersection of x-axis and y-axis, this particular point is called as origin. Okay, that particular point is called as origin, which is represented by this letter O. Okay, see, this origin O has 0 distance from both the x-axis and y-axis. This is lying on the intersection of these two x and y-axis. So if we write the coordinates of this origin, we will write it as 0, 0. That is, for this point origin, the x coordinate and y coordinate will be 0. Now, let us see how to determine the signs of the coordinates of a point in a quadrant which is lying in the xy plane or Cartesian plane. You see, let us consider this first quadrant. I am considering this particular point P here, and I want to write the coordinates of this particular point P with the signs as well. So here you see, this particular point P, this is lying in the first quadrant. The first quadrant is actually enclosed by the positive x-axis and positive y-axis. So the coordinates of this particular point or any point in the first quadrant will be of the form plus, plus. That is, x coordinate will be positive, and y coordinate also will be positive. So if we write the coordinate of this point P, see its x coordinate is 4 plus 4 or simply 4, y coordinate is 3 plus 3 or simply 3. Okay, similarly, if we consider a point in the second quadrant, see second quadrant is actually enclosed by the negative x-axis and the positive y-axis. Okay, x dash is actually negative x-axis, y dash is actually negative y-axis. Okay, y dash is actually negative y-axis. So if we consider a point P in the second quadrant is actually enclosed by the negative x-axis and positive y-axis. So the point in the second quadrant will be of the form minus comma plus. That is, x coordinate will be negative, y coordinate will be positive. So if we consider this particular point P, its x coordinate is minus 4, y coordinate is 3 here. So minus 4 comma 3. Now if we consider a point in the third quadrant. See, the third quadrant is actually enclosed by the negative x-axis and negative y-axis. So a point which is lying in the third quadrant, its coordinate will be of the form minus comma minus. That is, x coordinate will be negative, y coordinate also will be negative. So if we consider this particular point P here, its coordinates will be x coordinate is minus 4, y coordinate is minus 3. Okay, similarly, if you consider a point in the fourth quadrant, the fourth quadrant is actually enclosed by the positive x-axis and negative y-axis. So if we write the coordinate of a point which is lying in the fourth quadrant, it will be of the form plus comma minus. That is, x coordinate will be positive, y coordinate will be negative. So if we write the coordinate of this particular point P here, its x coordinate is 4, comma y coordinate is, y value is minus 3. So 4 comma minus 3. Okay. So in this video, we have learned about the Cartesian coordinate system or the xy coordinate system and how to locate coordinates of a point in the Cartesian plane. Also, we learned about the conventions or signs of coordinates in different quadrants. I hope it is clear to you. Thank you.